Alright, we're going to start putting the main tube of the rocket together, and to do that we're going to do a process called laminating, where you make layers are put together to make a new product. For example, when you make plywood, you don't put layers of plywood with all the grain going like this. You have the grain going this way, and the next layer across, and then the next layer is up and down, then the next layer is across. It makes it a lot more strong. And the same is true of the cardboard tube that you're going to make. So we're going to start with a plain piece of paper, and we're going to wrap it around this plastic tube. And you want to wrap it kind of tightly when you're first making the tube. Now, you'll notice that when this is done, this piece of plastic you're not going to keep. It's just a guide to help you make the tube. And when you take that out later, it's the perfect size for the nose cone to go in. Now, it's important to glue this properly for a couple reasons. One, because if you don't glue the inside layers, sometimes you'll go to put the nose cone in and a piece will get bent in, and then when you go to put the nose cone in, it won't work, and you're going to mangle it and it'll get all messed up inside. So what we're going to do to start that then is, before we glue that, we're going to mark the paper. I'm going to roll it tightly right to the edge there, and I'm going to mark the paper across. And the rest of this then, I'm going to use glue stick so that when I wrap this around, the paper will stick right up to the edge, but I wanted to mark it because I don't want the glue and the paper to stick to the tube. And again, I want that as tight as possible. I don't want any gaps around that. And you'll see that when it comes down to it, you can move that tube in and out. Alright, so it's still loose. That's the first piece here. Then there are two pieces of gum tape. One's quite a bit longer than the other. And what you're going to do on this one, you'll open this up and you're going to wet it so that it'll stick. And then this seam of the paper, you're going to put right in the middle and roll it onto the sticky tape. Now, don't try to lick this because you'll get a bad paper cut, and the glue doesn't taste good anyway. If it were minty, it might be worth it, but it's not. So make sure you use a sponge, because otherwise you won't get it wet enough. It'll start drying real quickly. And once you get it glued, again, put it seam down and roll it so that it's tightly on. And you'll notice that it's not going to cover. There's going to be a gap there because it's not big enough around. So don't worry about that. That's how it's supposed to be. For the second piece of gummy tape, though, you need to change the direction of how it's wrapped around the tube. So we're going to wrap it on a 45-degree angle. And part of how you're going to do that is you're going to take one side of the tape and fold it down perpendicular, and that'll make it look like a triangle here. And once you have it marked, then you're going to cut it along that line. Now, this is the most confusing part of this whole process, is how to put this onto the tube. If you put the flat side that you cut on the table so that it sticks up at a 45-degree angle. And imagine the tube sticking straight up and down like this. That's how you're going to do it, so that the tube is perpendicular to this bottom edge that you've cut. So I'm going to wet this with the sponge, this second piece. Again, don't lick it. You need to get it nice and wet because it'll start drying before you're done. But you don't want to get a paper cut. So you might want to show that from on top.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this down here. Again, so this is flat. And this piece, I'm going to line up that edge perpendicular. And then I'm going to start rolling this back. And I'm pressing down on the tube as I'm rolling it up. And it's rolling at an angle. And it'll go past the edge, and that's fine, as it should be. So that the tape is wrapped around, no bubbles. I need to make sure that all the seams are nice and flat. Now, this end is pretty well flush and even, so I'm going to leave that alone. This end, though, you'll see that the gum tape sticks out well beyond the white paper. Can you see the white paper in there?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So, while this is still wet, I'm going to trim this down until it's even with the white paper. And then I'm done. You need to set it aside so it can dry. Don't take the tube out yet. When this got wet, everything expanded a little bit, and as it dries, it's going to shrink. Later on, you'll just put your finger inside and twist it, and the tube will come right out, and you'll be fine. But for the meantime, this step is done, so we're going to set it aside and go to the next step.